I believe we are alive. No, not alive. I believe we're recording.
Well, the whole point
Good
is to
to
be
see you,
dead,
Jeff.
according to this chapter. We should be dead.
Yeah, if we were being the true philosopher a la Socrates.
Yeah, right.
It's I think this time more than any other episode we've done, as like in any of the series of the books we've looked at, I think we really need to point out that we are just scraping the surface of something really, really huge here. It's not to say we haven't been doing that in others as well, but this particular chapter, it's huge, it's momentous, and of course, you and I we're going to do our best to bring some light to it, but want to recognize at the same time that it is absolutely huge. You can go off in 1,000 different directions just from reading this chapter in your own research. You and I will have chosen like one tiny little avenue to focus on, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm feeling more daunted today than I've actually ever felt before doing one of these videos. So I'm really curious to see what we end up saying. Yeah.
I hope that our growing viewership around this work are also engaged in it, and to some extent, or if they choose to be, and will participate in some way, because I too feel that way. We need all the help we can get. And I also would say that this feels like such a careful treatment of something so sacred and so importantly real, that this project will bear fruit as a whole, as a process by which we face our own limitations and hopefully slightly exceed them.
Yeah. I thought just before we actually start looking at the first text today, I chose the first two texts and you chose the latter two. But before we look at them, I think it is worth reflecting just on the structure of this whole chapter, because we're basically invited to look at Plato's Timaeus, and the story of the picture that Plato gives out of the mouth of Socrates of the immortality of the soul. He makes arguments in this text for this, both mythical arguments and logical arguments for its existence, and just delving into that work is sublime. And Steiner, obviously, he picks out one or two aspects that he chooses to focus on in this chapter. And then he'll take us on to Timaeus, which is basically looking at sort of like another story about sort of this whole question of where did this life thing come from? Where did like life, the universe, and everything come from? Again, from Socrates' lips. So we've got this in. I said it incorrectly first. The first dialogue that we're introduced to is in Phaedo. I think I might have said Timaeus, but I got that wrong. It was in Phaedo, and then the second one is in Timaeus, where he's looking at the a picture for the beginning of the whole of life and the cosmos. And then the third text, which he looks at in some detail, is the Symposium, where we are treated to, it's like this essence of the question of what is love. And this well-known conversation or between multiple people at a drinking party, basically in ancient Rome, where obviously at the end of it Socrates gives his view on what love is, and how he will come back to this point, how he himself is to all intents and purposes, states that this was an initiatory process that he went through. He received this through this lady Diatoma, and this is these three parts of Plato that he's chosen to highlight here. They are also not. They're not by chance in this book, because the book is called Christianity as Mystical Fact. And what we're doing in this, or what Steiner is doing in this chapter, is highlighting that if you look at the key ingredients of Christianity, you're finding them deeply rooted in what we discover in the Plato dialogues. So I think it's really good to have that in mind. There's so much going on in the chapter, but there's also a poetic wholeness to it in the context of this book. It's really something that begins to grow out of this chapter, which was already being brought to us in the previous chapter when we were looking at Heraclitus, Empedocles, and Pythagoras. So
a bit more on the structure. It's called Plato as Mystic, this chapter, right? And this is not a popular opinion in this day and age that this would be the case with the Neoplatonists that we've talked about and talked with. But it's interesting to note where Steiner's speaking and where Plato through Socrates and Plato himself are speaking, because it's very, very interwoven, this chapter, with Steiner's thought, and it's like experiencing an initiate talking to an initiate, right? And you're just like, whoa, wait a minute here. These people are speaking the same language, and it confirms the Plato as a mystic from an I would say an experiential level. It's not just like this intellect that pulls out, because the words you hear used, structurally speaking, are words like philosophy in ways that we don't have an inkling of unless we start to really hear what he's saying as relates to coming out of Heraclitus, right? And then in Heraclitus, and the notion of the logos as an experience of a of a divine reality. And the same with philosophy. It's not. This is the love of wisdom. It's not an abstract discipline. They were generating the discipline that would come later, and that Aristotle would pick up, and that philosophy that would formalize around. But this is the generation of philosophy. That is no small order, and it describes the way in which philosophy is available as an initiatory process, but not in the abstract sense, and not seeing Plato as just a philosopher, who I'm reminded of. I'm listening to this in preparing for Greg Enriquez, who we spoke to just a couple of days ago. I've been listening to this series, The Elusive Eye, with Greg and John Vervaeke and Christopher Mastro Pietro, and it's really, really great. But in it, interestingly enough, John describes the meeting, say, of Socrates and the woman as as a kind of fortune teller experience, right? Very sort of pedestrian. Like John's a very nuanced thinker, and so he's able to really give it convincing weight. But the idea is that Socrates went to this place, Delphi, right? Meets this lady who's a literal woman who is a fortune teller kind of person. He doesn't say that, but gives general suggestions that awakens, some association in the soul. That yes, right. That it's sort of trickery, so to speak. And this is completely different what he's talking about, because he goes into the wisdom, the love that is in the soul, that is available as an initiatory process, but a participatory initiatory process. And finally, as relates to structure, there's a point at which Steiner's voice comes in, and he starts to talk about the way through Plato and Socrates. I'm not sure which one is speaking specifically at this point, about the senses and the separation of the soul from the senses. And this is very much in line with the epistemological processes we've been talking about for some time. So this sort of sets the table, and you put me right in the text. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah. There's another reflection before we look at the text, because I do think we still need to prime even further. But building on what you were saying there, and this fortune teller experience that Socrates has with Diotima. I think this is also a reflection of the true sickness of our age. Within anthroposophies, like the date 1869 is important for a reason. It's the date that Steiner identifies as when the church cut off this idea, not killed the idea of the spirit, but failed to differentiate between the soul and the spirit. And in that sense, anything like the nobility, the sheer splendor, the beyond wordness, the ineffable nature of the spirit is something that has been lost through the ages. And of course, Plato's writing 1,000 years before this process, where the spirit is really something that is alive, and it's essential, and it's experienced within life. And with our dry abstract thinking that's that we've been schooled in, and that's like materialism has inculcated in us, it is very difficult, unless you meet the works of Steiner and other people with this deep appreciation of the reality of the spirit. It's very difficult to read someone like Plato in any other way, and this is I suppose this is part of what you and I perceive our mission is to try to reawaken the reality of what's being talked about here, to not make the fatal mistake of trivializing it to some everyday experience that we're used to having nowadays. It's something far, 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 far richer that's going on there.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought in that the differentiation of the soul and the spirit, because though Steiner himself doesn't elucidate a sharp distinction or even exoterically describe the difference, it's really an experience through the reading in the chapter that the soul, the spirit, and the physical, the matter, say, not the physical necessarily, are juxtaposed in ways that really illuminate each in the role, particularly the soul and the spirit. So that was that part was clear to me.
And one more final introduction part for me. Sorry, one more time, just as an example of the amazing richness of this chapter, and digging a little bit deeper into Phaedo in this particular one, which is the first conversation that he looks at, where it's the argument for the immortality of the soul. And one of the theories that is used to justify, to say why it's actually fairly obvious, really, if you think about it, that the soul is something immortal. He's using this argument of the theory of opposites, is that all things that come into being are moving from one opposite to the other. And when you begin to, when he talks about like a day being born of night, longness being born of shortness, a wakefulness being born of sleep, and these type of things, so like anchoring this idea that it's like we're moving within opposites. Becoming always happens within the polarity of opposites. And when you've got that so like firmly grounded in your mind, and then you begin to think about what Hegel did, and you just go, he's doing the same thing. He's doing the same thing. He's using a different language, but we are also the initiatory knowledge that we're meeting through Plato here is the same. You can feel the same flavor of it. Once you're familiar with it, you can feel how Hegel is doing the same things, like the becoming of the world. It's like it's always this reconciliation of opposites. And then once you've or if you're a Jungian, so like you'll see that's like this fundamental idea of opposites, and so like us moving backwards and forwards or through these opposites rather than being stuck in one opposite. It's the same initiatory truth that is being revealed. And I had perhaps if I leave it there, but there's this amazing richness in going all the way back to Plato, because the truths that you see there, they are being repeated by other great thinkers in later ages who are. I don't want that. You can't say they're updating the truth, because the truth is still the same, but they are expressing it in a language that is more accessible for the age. In a time when notion of the spirit has died, then Hegel is perhaps a more appropriate voice to be listening to for certain types of minds.
That is great. That is a great association. Now, and I forgot that in I forget if it was Riddles of Philosophy or Spiritual Science as a Foundation for Social Forms, he refers to Hegel as an initiate. Right. And it was an initiate of his time, not an initiate of Plato's time. Yeah. And what we know that Hegel was missing was the mediating factor between the polarity. Right. But he put the polarity together in a way that that would have made Plato proud, I would say, Yeah. So that's a really, and it really makes you, that it brings out the nature of the soul as the mediating factor is something that Hegel didn't give us, but we can take from this. And this is what this chapter is about, is it's the battle for the soul. This is the moment we're in, and this is the way in which this Plato comes right in the front door, contemporarily speaking. So now I'm a Neoplatonist.
And we're actually going to be able to build on that, Hegel, when we get to Timaeus. After we've read this bit here, there's something else like magical going on here. Anyway, let's have a look at the. You're going to read the first text for us, aren't you? If you can you see that all okay there?
Hang on, the printer's going off here.
Okay, sure.
Okay, I'll read over it.
Yeah.
Let us trace the whole development of this dialogue, in which Socrates leads his listeners to the point where they are able to see the eternal in the human personality. The listeners absorb, that's key right there.
Mhm. Yeah.
Personality. The listeners absorb his thoughts. They search within themselves for something in their own inner experiences through which they can say yes to his ideas. They put forward the objections that spring to their minds. What has happened to the listeners when the dialogue has reached its end? They have found something in themselves which they did not possess before. They have not merely absorbed an abstract truth. They have gone through a process of development. Something has come to life within them which was not alive in them before. Is not this comparable to an initiation? Does not this throw light on the reason why Plato expressed his philosophy in the form of dialogue? These dialogues are intended to be nothing but a literary form of the proceedings in the mystery places. That's a good one to pick right there.
Thanks for reading that, Jeff. It's so nice to hear it read as well. This is something has been born within us. If I focus in on that, is part of the reason why I chose this. This is really at the heart of the ancient mysteries, and it's at the heart of the modern mysteries of anthroposophy. We are not interested in abstract concepts as explanations for things. We understand the value of conceptual abstractions, but we are not happy with that. We have to generate within ourselves like a direct living experience that assures the reality of what we are, of this world that we're moving into. So this direct inner experience, I'm strongly reminded of as well of, obviously, for the philosophy of freedom, the opening chapter. I'm not going to give predefined concepts on what freedom is, and what thinking is. I'm going to create a region of the soul to which you can always have recourse. And this is the same nature that's being pointed out here. So like in these ancient initiatory centers, it wasn't about bludgeoning the mind with a load of concepts that it's like a brainwashing, so that sort of like you would go out and sort of like convert the world. It was waking up something that is there in the immortal soul, waiting to be woken up in us, so that we can move beyond that abstract of this direct experience that we are a living part of this living universe. This isn't a universe full of dead hydrogen helium atoms. This is a living universe, and it's not enough for us even to sort of like to have that abstract concept. We have to the initiatory process, of which like Christ becomes like an essential point here, but we're not there yet. This is a process that has to grow in us, so that after a long period of preparation, which he refers to in also in this book, that this spark of fire suddenly creates something. There's a new living being that lives within us, or that talks through us, that is able to communicate with us. We live in, to use like religious terminology, we live in communion with something far greater than ourselves, and this is what he's helping us link our thinking to, this idea that there is a living knowledge, and we want to partake in that. We want to participate in that again.
Yeah. Oh gosh. That we are a continuum of the unity of life into our thinking is not abstract. Our personalities aren't abstract, and this is why This is why Plato uses a personality, an exemplar in a certain sense, a symbol that reproduces itself, right? Because this is the thing I keep saying about symbols is that they're transparent. I usually say that they're both representative of the thing and the thing that they're representing. They're both on both levels. They're a metaphor, but they're not just a metaphor. But I really is coming to understand this slightly differently in that they are this symbol of the personhood that we are developing in ourselves as a creation, as a scientific, religious, artistic act, all in one, are something that we see through as symbols, but we also can perceive the entity reality that they are. So they're and so then, as you say, that would be a place in the soul that reproduces itself, that starts to reproduce itself, that you can access, go back to, because it's alive as a process. It's not an intellectual bank of concepts, something like that. And that's why he uses Socrates, Plato. So Plato gives us the mediating factor. Like he's there witnessing it, which is why he can foresee the coming of the actuality of the personality of the Christ in the personality of the inhabiting of the personality of and transformation of a personality in a person by this continuum that's existent as the logos that Heraclitus said, and Pythagoras, who invented the word philosophy essentially, to out of I would suggest a deep sacred enthusiasm that love of wisdom is the participation that we're talking about. So fantastic.
Yeah.
And to trivialize Plato as a philosopher in a formalized sense that produced a lot of great ideas that inspire us, no question about it, from that perspective, is to accept the exoteric religion of the people as opposed to the marriage of the mysteries with the articulation of an experience and a creation of that experience.
Yeah. And to be fair, I mean, if you and I hadn't had the beautiful stroke of destiny or of karma to have come into contact with Steiner, who knows, we might have still been working out of the same frame that all these people that only see the abstract nature of the thinking that's going in there. And quite clearly there are other people there that they can sense something deep going on there, and they're responding to the inherent beauty that's in there. But if the spirit isn't something real for you, which is the most normal state for a modern mind, then this initiatory aspect of what is really going on in Plato's dialogues is going to pass you by completely. It's like a tragic way. It's deeply tragic that, but also I suppose it's inevitable. It's this problem of hermeneutics, like that problem of like interpreting. How do you interpret these things if you haven't developed the adequate conceptual framework to interpret these things? Then certain levels of understanding are always going to remain opaque to you. It's like the point we were making with Greg the other day. It's like if you haven't developed certain concepts in your mind, you're never going to see them in reality. They just do not exist, even if they do exist.
Right, in the sense that we were just talking about, which is you're not developing them abstractly to hold them as a pragmatic, as if this were true. Then it's operationally helpful to give you a kind of understanding, which are all quite fine, and it's all steps in a direction. But if, in order for it not to be abstract, you have to have those. You have to have those concepts. So one of the things I want to say is that like this can sound like if there's two things I want to say. One is that if I'm witnessing myself reading Steiner, I have to admit that I have a pretty exoteric understanding of Steiner, because that is why every time I come back to a work like Christianity's Mystical Fact or Philosophy of Freedom, that I see it at a different level, right? Because it's real at all of those levels.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's revealing ontological realities, say, at all of those levels. And so, I've gone through my process similarly, right? I thought Nietzsche was God at a certain point, and that is a process. And then the other thing I want to say is that this explains that we're not worshippers of Steiner. When we say we think this, it's because we're seeing something similar from our unique points of view that are eternal in their truth, and it's not that I possess it. It's the color red. That we're experiencing something like the experience of a color, and that there's emotions associated with it as well that are lawful in their condensation of the spirit into the soul. So I just want to add that, because people are Platonists, and people are Whiteheadians, and people are Steinerians. And I would say Steiner is in line here. So
it's really helpful you explicating your thoughts, because it also helped me to link in the importance. He starts this whole chapter with Plato's seventh letter, and the question is, he says it doesn't really matter whether he wrote it or not, which is I guess that was a debate going on in his time 100 plus years ago. What he says is that's like what we've got going on in the seventh letter, Plato's seventh letter, is Plato saying that all of these truths are I know that it's like just writing knowledge on a piece of paper is never going to be able to awaken this divine fire in the other person. This is a process that requires time, and therefore he doesn't say it doesn't have value talking about it, but the mere reading of this content is never going to be enough to awaken that the daimon in us that reveals its true immortal nature, the soul's immortality. So study is obviously deeply important, but study in itself does not guarantee. There has to be like an intense inner work with this material, viewing it from multiple perspectives, letting it live in you, let these truths live in you, and then they then begin to inform like that own inner dialogue with yourself, this inner voice, this inner being that you're trying to wake up, this Zeusian child, Dionysian child that's like is trying to be born within you. So like, and Zeus like sticks it in his thigh so that it can gestate there, so that eventually it can be born as a true separate spiritual entity, fully cognizant of its own reality. Yeah.
With love as the mother. Right.
With love. Yeah.
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 Oh, wow.
Okay. Should we move on to the next one? Okay. Oh, no. I can see that is the wrong. Hold on a sec. Let me just check. That's the right one. Yeah, I left a slide in there. There we go. That is the right one. So it's quite a lengthy one.
Okay. Here we go. The drama of the world's creation is presented in the Timaeus. Is it pronounced Timaeus?
I think it's Timaeus.
Timaeus, thank you. Whoever wishes to retrace the paths leading to this creation comes to the point of divining the archetypal force from which everything has sprung. Now, to discover the maker and father of this universe were a task indeed. That's an awkward. Now, to discover the maker and father of this universe were a task indeed, and have discovered him. To declare him unto all men were a thing impossible. The mystic knew that was meant by this thing impossible. It indicates the drama of God. God is not present for him in the materially comprehensible world. There he is present as nature. He lies spellbound in nature. According to the ancient mystics, only he can approach him who awakens the divine within himself. Therefore, he cannot so easily be made comprehensible to everyone. He does not appear in person, even to those who approach him. This is what the Timaeus says. The Father has created the world out of the cosmic body and the cosmic soul. In perfect proportions, he has united harmoniously the elements which came into being when he offered his own separate existence by diffusing himself. Thus, the body of the world came into existence. On this body of the world, the soul of the world is stretched in the form of a cross. This soul is the divine element in the world. It is met with death on the cross in order that the world may exist. Plato is able to call nature the tomb of the divine element.
So, as my understanding, or part of my understanding, we've looked at Phaedo, which is about the immortality of the soul, and this is about the creation of the world and the soul itself. So, what's the relationship of this immortal soul to the whole world? This is like Act 2 in Steiner's in this chapter from Steiner, and he's what is he doing? He's placing in an historical context this idea that as immortal beings, Plato was recognizing that these immortal souls, they don't just exist, they also have a history, they have come into being, and as we whilst we're still living in the thick of nature, we forget these divine origins that we have, this immortal nature, but also how our own immortal nature relates to the whole cosmos and to the other immortal souls that populate this planet and beyond. And trying to fit this amazingly rich picture of what it means to be a human being in the process of history. And this is what Plato is trying to communicate in this dialogue through with Socrates, that once we begin to play with the idea as an abstract concept, that this is true. This is the first step to beginning to awaken this a direct inner experience awareness of what he is positing as a spiritual fact. I do think it's also really interesting here that we can also begin to see, so in this whole framework of like, this is the whole of the creation story that's going on here, how everything came into being. We can also make a connection with Hegel when we read this creation story that's presented in Timaeus. What we're being exposed to is a narrative for how it all came into being, how all the different facets of life like fit together into this unified whole, unified meaningful whole. And the connection, a connection for me here with Hegel is that in a way, or not in a way, Hegel was also trying to recreate that at the conceptual level. For Hegel, what's one way of understanding his work is it's like all of these concepts which are archetypal forms. He uses the word archetypal at the beginning of this. The creation comes to the point of divining the archetypal force from which everything has sprung. And Hegel's project is concepts, archetypes, it's like forms, working out, creating an understanding for how they all link together into one harmonious whole. So again, it's possible to discover how the truths that Plato is communicating in his creation myth are also again present in a radically different manner in Hegel, because the final project is the same, is something which unifies all experience. The logos doing its work, or thinking, it's like that being which allows us to think, namely the logos, how it is the uniter of all of these concepts into one harmonious whole. And just a small detail here in this Timaeus, there's loads of things going on with numbers and relationships and harmonious relationships, which we won't go into here, which are all like go to further support that there's this rich interconnection of harmonies and tones, again Pythagorean life, like going on in this chapter. That was part of what I take away from this little bit.
Yeah, it's always hard for me. It's a tough nut to crack when the word God is brought in, because the connotations are, a all-knowing, omnipotent creator that set the world on its course, and either receded and let it go, a la Big Bang and entropy, or is punishing with hurricanes and whatever, and those are understandings, and there's something about them that is exoterically helpful, I suppose. But what he's getting at here, and what he's witnessing, he clearly, So if you read this and you don't think that Plato's an initiate, I just don't know. You don't have a concept of what an initiate is in my mind, because the idea that the logos is inherent to all of the nature of existence, and that there's something eternal about the soul in its relationship to that which is a given eternality, which is the logos. So the logos isn't the soul. The logos is that which is resurrecting the soul on the cross of existence, right? And here he is, right? Right.
World soul cross.
Yeah, right. Yes. And it connects. This the beauty of this also is it connects our soul, not our spirit. When I want to personally, I want to make the differentiation that our soul is an undifferentiated, to the degree that it is undifferentiated, unindividuated yet part of the Godhead, so to speak, part of creation. And it is our work to individuate that soul so that it becomes a symbol of the creation that is the unified creation that is all of existence. That's our work. And Plato's describing it, right? It's a psychology. It's the birth of a psychology that has soul, spirit, and embodied existence in it already.
So before we move on to your chats, because there's one, for me at least, there's one important part that goes on here. So we've been presented with the dialogues on the immortality of the soul. We've been presented with the story of creation, how how the world soul was created out of God. And this is far more refined than that, because when you hear the word God, you've got to disabuse yourself of perhaps a simplified exoteric Christian understanding, and you've got to go into the roots of what God is for the ancient Greeks. You can't be satisfied with, I know what he's talking about, if you've only been subjected to, it's like exoteric Christianity, exoteric Christian ideas about that. So immortal soul, creation, but why is it all messed up, and how do we awaken this fire, this divine fire within us, so that it becomes a direct living experience? This is why I think Steiner has to bring in, it's like the third dialogue here, which is the symposium of love, because this is also really interesting what's going on in here. You've got all these different guys in this conversation giving their ideas of what love is, but there's actually something that's going on between the Timaeus and Symposium here that's a really interesting nature, because if we go back to the times prior to Plato, that this idea of God being a jealous God, and it's like the world being born from strife, is what's prevalent. It's like in the world, and he now, I don't think he talks about it in this chapter, but a little bit of reading around it. When you talk about, it's like, when you look at these creation myths, there's obviously, it's like, there's some cosmic battle going on, and Uranus is having his knackers chopped off by his son. So it's all aggressive, and there's not much talk of love. It's like it's survival of the fittest, isn't it? It's the war of all against all, so that's like, I can be top of the pile. But what's going on between Timaeus and Symposium is this idea, no, there's this principle of love that's at the root cause of the whole of creation. It's not strife, it's not saying strife doesn't exist, but it's saying, so like if we look at it more clearly, what's being born in this period in ancient Greece, which is also going on in Judea at that time as well, in a different form. We might touch on that in a second. But no, there's another process, a deeper process, like that is the heart of creation, and that this is love. This is what Socrates is initiated into, so like the nature of this love, and that's what he then goes to describe to his pupils in there, or to his friends at this drinking party. And this is also obviously becomes, you can already begin to feel here, if you're sensitive to this type of thing, that we've been talking about the world cross, the soul's like stretched out on the world cross, and then the importance of love for redeeming this nature, so like using love as that which has to live within us, so that the direct inner experience of the truth of all of these different aspects that Plato's laid out, it is only through that path that we can actually return to this direct experience of the truth of what Plato is describing in these various dialogues. Yeah,
it's all right there. The strife is there too. To be stretched out on the cross of existence is that's not without some strife, right? and he speaks of, first I want to go back just one into the, I think it's one step back, because through this whole thing it keeps coming up that you can't prove something, right? Mm-hmm. You can't prove a reality. Proving a reality is impossible. Experiencing a reality is not, and then articulating that is the way in which you go about that. Isn't to prove a point. It is to get your point approved. Mm-hmm. He uses the term approval, Plato. Yeah. Seeking approval before speaking the experience. Sort of, so that's science, right? Looking to check the experience that you're having, and articulating it in a reality in a true way, is to seek approval of the gods, so to speak, right? And so this then becomes, and he uses gods in the plural, which is really important, because this goes to our toward the end of our conversation with Greg, is there what we have is a multiplicity of being, and that's reality, and being and logos are a unified reality, and being is coming into being through the logos as soul, which is in relationship to the organization of physical matter and the artifactuality of physical matter in a certain sense. So I wanted to bring that in, because then then he brings in the mother as the bearer of the son that will be love, right? Yes. That or is the love that rebirths the crucifying moments in one's own life, right?
Let me just read that part, because I've got. Sorry,
yeah, please.
Yeah,
please.
The wise woman. There must, however, be a basis which allows what brings the daemon to birth in the soul to appear as a being in external reality. This force cannot work in the same way as the forces we can observe in the soul as belonging to it and at home with it. We see that this is the force of the soul before it has received wisdom, which Socrates represents as the wise woman. It is the maternal principle which gives birth to the Son of God, wisdom, the logos.
And there's the differentiation between the spirit, the daemon, and the soul, which is yet until that moment undifferentiated, right?
Yeah.
That is beautiful.
This I'm wondering how I can thread this in another video I was watching around the symposium. This guy, I think it's called Premiata Philosophy. He did a wonderful descriptions of like a 40-minute video of the symposium, and he links in Proverbs 8 to this concept of the symposium. What's going on in here? This wisdom that in Proverbs 8, you're presented with this picture, which is it's like this demiurge picture. It's like a loving God, but that requires wisdom to create creation, if you like. And it's this also this divine maternal aspect, this wisdom aspect that is there with God at the beginning of this creation process. So this importance of that as we wake up this being, this our daimons, that which is allowing this to happen is the wisdom that's we are like trying to get to live within us. And this reminds me so much of the work we were doing around the end of the Riddles of Philosophy and the nature, where we looked at the nature of Sophia, Philosophia, Anthroposophia, this idea that this is a living being that we have to invite into ourselves so that she can unfold her activity within us, this revelatory, awakening, initiating activity in us, which allows us to wake up to the world at ever higher levels of understanding permeated with wisdom.
Yes. I would say, gosh, there's two different directions I want to go in. I'm going to go in both directions at once. The idea that wisdom is a goal is fool's gold, right? The wisdom is the ground out of which we impregnate the goal, the ideal, the symbol that's self-generating, right? And the idea, and this is where Hegel got lost, I think, to some extent, or it maybe not lost, but he was of his time, evolution of consciousness wise, because maybe the self had not yet taken hold deeply enough as an experience that we birth, that we give birth to. Like Socrates, that's not a fortune teller experience. He experienced the birth of the Son of God in himself. That's what he experienced. So if we have the logos and we take that as logic, and we reify logic and think we're going to get to the answer, we're going for wisdom, and it's the wrong place to go. Wisdom is part of it, but it's just an ingredient. Right? It's not the be all to end all. It's a necessary ingredient. Yeah. It's an essential ingredient. But the crucis is in the way in which wisdom is individualized, born, carried, ferried.
Yeah.
Like Siddhartha is ferried, is born across the forgetful waters into reality, where you then have to find it, where you have to experience suffering and get stretched on the, this is why I love Zach's work as well. Zach Stein is the need for ensoulment is incredibly important. You can't bypass that experience. So, yeah. Love is found at the crossroads. It's the old blues tale of selling your soul to the devil, right? That you gain what you gain at the crossroads is heartbreak and heartbreak turns into the Son of Man, the Son of God.
Which I believe takes us to your your first slide, which I'll read, or perhaps it might actually be the next one. These two slides flow nicely one into the other. But if we start with the first one, I'll read it for you. Platonic wisdom and Greek mythology unite, so equally do mystery wisdom and mythology. The gods that they created were the objects of the religion of the people. The history of their coming into existence was the secret of the mysteries. No wonder that this was accounted dangerous to betray the mysteries. This betraying meant the origins of the gods of the people, and the right understanding of this origin is wholesome. Misunderstanding is destructive.
Wow, doesn't that describe the moment we're in? What is at stake in uniting, coming to terms with the mystery wisdom, in the sense we were just talking about, and articulating esoteric reality that is approvable from higher spheres, say, that doesn't generate false gods, the idolatry of material science, for example, right? That doesn't generate a belief in that there is no such thing as the soul. That doesn't that we are, all of the things we've lamented of materialistic culture, that is a sort of death wish cult, right? That has reified and deified that which is artifact, and that it's interesting because it's so dangerous, right?
Yeah.
So these people are generating a process that then also is taken by some other people as in an exoteric way, and then something destructive is visited on the world. It's I don't know how to reconcile that quite, right? Should we just stop? But just because I feel great because I've had an initiatory experience, but how is it going to be taken? And so you see this confusion all the time right now. This is a riff, but you see this confusion in that people say, yeah, Nietzsche was great, but look at the Nazis. It's like, do you blame this generative character because it was exploited, or is there something else in our culture that needs to see the origins of that which the genius that he was what he was drawing from, what Plato was drawing from? Can we just see what they were drawing from rather than either exploiting the exoteric nature of the fruit of what they generated and becoming Platonists, right? Yeah, I'll just stop there for now.
I think it's good to dwell on it, what you're talking about with Nietzsche there, and this contradiction, or this idea that it can be wholesome or destructive. The same medicine can be wholesome or destructive depending on the way in which it has, in the way in which it's presented to the people, and how this love for truth has to be at the heart of it. It's like if we go back to your example with Nietzsche, yeah, Nietzsche wasn't perfect. Nobody's perfect. Come on, get a life, guys. So let's try to see where he adds value and see where he's he's just like the rest of us, or like somebody who, it's like made bad friends in life or whatever. Is that, how relevant is that to actually a genuine pursuit of the truth? It's not, especially if you gravitate towards those arguments as a reason for dismissing that person. then what it's not a love of truth that's guiding our actions. Then it's sort of like, oh, I like this, I don't like that, therefore I'll have more of that, and I'll reject that because I don't like that, which has got nothing to do with truth. It's got absolutely nothing to do with truth. And I think, or at least when I heard you talking about like the illness of the age that we're living in, that's one of the ways that I represent it to myself. There's my likes and dislikes are sacred. They are the determinants of truth, and that is deeply problematic, because even I don't want to. I'll just mention it in passing, but I don't want it to become part of the conversation. But I was listening to somebody who'd read Harari's book there, and of course, it's like not 100% of what he say is demonic or stupid or anything like that. No, there's some reasonable things going on there. I happen to think that's like on some of the things he's severely misguided, but to tar somebody with a brush, it's like, or finding one excuse to reject a person is hugely problematic if you're interested in the truth. It's not the source of the truth that's important. It's recognizing the truth wherever it's coming from, even if it's from the mouths of babes. They are also capable of wisdom, and we have to learn to recognize that.
Yeah, if we don't get in their way, they actually are just they are the expression of the continuum of wisdom, of the nature of things, of reality. That's for sure. There's no question about that. And it's really occurring to me. Well, first of all, I want to say, just before this in the text, he brings up feeling, right, and the importance of feeling as that which is the satisfier of the surety, let's say, of truth.
Yeah, experience. Right? Yeah.
Yes, and that feeling being being the key, which is what leads into the discussion of love. So when love is a feeling that is informed by the spirit, then we have the transformed soul that is stretched out on the canvas of life, you might even say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Just one thing before you move to your last slide, which I would like to point out as I think is really, really interesting. He also talks about Philo of Alexandria. And this is also a supremely interesting person in philosophy. And in this particular book, Steiner says, Philo, of whom it was said he was Plato reborn, called the wisdom born of man, the son of God, or Logos. And it's worth sort of looking at that a bit going on there. But from a historical perspective, which, yeah, if I just say it, from a historical perspective, one of the reasons why Philo is so deeply fascinating is because he is the reconciler. He is the guy that takes like some of the deepest truths out of the Torah, out of like Hebrew wisdom, and he directly connects them with Christianity, what's growing up in Christianity. So he is among. So when Heraclitus sort of like coined the term logos, so 500 years previous to the events on Golgotha, these were elements of wisdom being received by these initiates. But they're being it's like off the islands of Western Turkey, therefore, in the case of Heraclitus, and then in Israel or Judea, or I'm not sure of the names of the kingdoms at that time, but it's like these same concepts are being also described, because this wisdom is also flowing into them, they're being given different names. And how Philo is so deeply interesting is in how he links. So he's saying basically the Old Testament is exactly, it is the New Testament is unthinkable without the Old Testament, because all of the spiritual underpinnings for what Christians say Christ is found in the philosophical system of the ancient Hebrews, but we also find it being developed in the ancient Greeks at the same time. And this was also something that we looked at when we looked at the beginning of anthroposophy. I don't know if you remembered it, but I wasn't aware of how important Philo was in that process there of really, the one is unthinkable without the other.
Yeah,
that's really quite interesting.
I had that feeling all the way through this, now that you mention it, that there's this going on with the what became religious impulse and what became philosophical, and then went boom, and went on division, divisive, even contradictory paths into the fractured nature of material science, which becomes a kind of religion in of itself, as we were saying. But this runs through that he uses Philo. Steiner uses Philo, reveals what Steiner himself is doing here, right? And probably is foreshadowing the way in which this unprovable reality is experienceable of the coming. This all is it's there, right? It's all there, described as that which is the initiates saw as the future and the present. This is the other thing: is the genesis, the constant, that creation story that we had up earlier. That is the story of now. It's not the story of something that happened from a clockwork god or whatever. And that's why it's available to us now, as not as abstract wisdom, but as wisdom born in the soul.
Yeah. I've realized what I did wrong. I forgot to paste in your second text, but I can read that. You know, you had another text that you wanted me to paste into the document. I thought I would read that now. Is it? I can't put it up on the screen because I haven't prepared the slide, so I'll just read it. Okay. Okay. So the child of God, still immature, is dismembered. It is present in man as a dismembered material intellectual science. But if in man sufficient higher wisdom, Zeus, is at work, it cherishes and cares for the immature child, which is then born again as the second son of God, Dionysus. Thus, out of science, out of the dismembered divine force in man, is born the harmonizing wisdom, which is the Logos, the Son of God, and of a mortal mother, who is the transitory soul of man, striving unconsciously for the divine. We are far from the spiritual reality represented in all this, as long as we see in it only a mere process of the soul and take it as a picture of this process. I'll just add the last couple of lines, even though you didn't paste them in. In this spiritual reality, the soul does not merely experience something within itself. It is completely disconnected from itself and participates in a cosmic process, which in truth takes place outside itself and not within it.
Yes. Yeah. Like, this is it, right? This is we are in the world. We are separate from the world. It is through our freedom that we attain the world, again, become worlded again, and this really, it's lovely how this places the soul as not a mere locality, but yet not that which is spiritualized, individualized, and it's the way in which we can know the world. It's like this is like philosophy of freedom, the culmination where you really truly understand why this freedom process of knowledge, the knowledge drama, say, is not limited to my personal experience, because that personal experience is the stuff of the world.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. When you said it like that, it was reminding me of one of these beautifully mystical comments that Steiner makes in passing in one of his lectures, and he says something along the lines of this: when I say I feel it's like, what is joy? It's not that I create joy within myself. It's joy lives within me, and I experience the being of joy living in me. And it's that participatory nature that you're describing. There's a recognition that it's like all of these thoughts, feelings, experiences, concepts, they are living realities which we allow to live within us. It's not, it's the world isn't out there. The world is, it's in here, it's everywhere. We are microcosms of what is going on at a macrocosmic level.
In relation, in community with spiritual beings. And the first spiritual beings we're in community with are each other as human beings. Like, you're invisible, right? What you are is not visible to me.
Yeah.
Right. And the idea that is stated by people that I can't see through your eyes, that is a formality that is developed within, like, cognitive science, say, or philosophy, psychology. That I can't see through your eyes is literally meant I can't see through the camera obscura, the machinery, instead of really seeing, which is what is looking through your eyes, that part of you that is looking through your eyes. When I let your thinking, I quiet my own, and I let your thinking wake up in me, I'm experiencing a spiritual being. And that there are beings at every level of existence. We are a distillate of spiritual beings that are looking to offer approval, say, of our experience of reality, and looking then to see through us as spiritual beings.
David Icke would say we are consciousness having a worldly experience, which I quite like.
Yeah, I meant to bring that similar thing to Greg, which is we're spiritual beings having physical experiences, not physical beings having spiritual experiences, and that's not a metaphor. That's the actuality, and that's why we can. That's why love is the birther.
That's right. It's the uniter of these opposites. Yeah. Right. That went quickly, didn't it?
We're doing good on time now.
We're doing a lot better than we used to, although we've sacrificed a lot as well. Anyway.
Oh, this was impossible, this chapter, but I think I feel like we got right at it.
We've got some good stuff there. I think so as well. I'll press the button.
Press the button.
Ta-da.